Hi guys, grab your coffee or whatever you choose to drink at this time. Let's get together for our daily catch-up and look at the top stories making headlines in Israel today. If we haven't met, I'm Raylene Marks. This is the Israel Brief, brought to you by Lay of the Land. I almost said Days of Our Lives. That would have been funny. And we take a look at those top stories making headlines here in Israel every Monday to Thursday. Now, it is day 208 of Israel's war with Hamas that started on the 7th of October. So let's take a look at the latest developments. And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken landed in Israel last night. This is the 7th time throughout the last now nearly 7 months that the Secretary of State has been in Israel. He has just concluded visits to Saudi Arabia and Jordan. And of course, we are still hoping that Israel will normalize ties with Saudi. Early this morning, the Secretary of State met with President Herzog. They discussed, amongst many issues, humanitarian aid, the ICC charges, and the President thanked the United States for standing by Israel and calling these proposed ICC charges or arrest warrants absolutely lawless. The top item of the agenda is a potential deal for the release of hostages. Yesterday I spoke about some of the clauses in those deals. We are still waiting for Hamas. Now, the Secretary of State and President Biden put the onus on Hamas to accept this deal. In fact, President Biden last night said that Hamas is the only obstacle to the ceasefire deal which would see the release of hostages. However, in true Hamas fashion, they have said that the US is trying to pressure them. You mean you can't stand up to a little bit of pressure? But for those of you out there who are chanting and calling for ceasefires and making accusations of genocide against Israel, the Jewish state, remember who the party is that consistently refuses a ceasefire in order for us to release the hostages. At least 6 of those hostages are dual American citizens. The Secretary of State also took some time before leaving for his meetings to meet with activists who were gathered outside his hotel this morning. These are activists fighting for the release of the hostages. He said that we will not rest until all the hostages are brought home. He reiterated that this is the main focus for the United States, is ensuring that the hostages are returned home. A short while ago, the Secretary concluded his meetings with Prime Minister Netanyahu and other officials. He will also head down to the south to Kibbutz Be'eri, which is one of the most hardest affected by the atrocities of the 7th of October. This is the first US official to visit Kibbutz Be'eri. Most officials go to nearby Kibbutz Kfar Aza. I have been there myself, but this is the first time an official will visit Kibbutz Be'eri. We have been speaking a lot about the situation on US campuses, and really it's like watching the zombie apocalypse come to life. Last night, the New York Police Department arrested dozens of protesters at Columbia, and also the encampment has been dismantled. Now, protesters boarded themselves up in Hamilton Hall, and there were reports of them taking at least one janitor as hostage, refusing to let him go. Wonder where they learn this stuff. They had unfurled a big banner that called for an intifada. Now, we all remember from the early 2000s and 1987 till about the early 1990s what an intifada is. The scenes of suicide bombings on buses, in restaurants and cafes was not unusual, and there was a significant uptick in the amount of terror attacks. This is what they are calling for. When they say globalize the intifada, they are calling for that on your streets wherever you are. Meanwhile, at UCLA, the police were able to quell some violence that broke out a short while ago. Both sides clashed following the pro-Palestine or pro-Hamas camp refusing to let Jewish students onto campus and also chanting invective that could actually make your skin crawl. There have also been footage shared of a Jewish man who was hit by a protester who also attempted to tase him, and a Jewish student beaten unconscious. Yes, so for those out there like Cynthia Nixon and Mehdi Hassan and all of those getting their knickers in a knot saying that these protests are peaceful, think again. What I did find quite amusing was a protester on Columbia campus making a call for food, saying that they are demanding humanitarian aid. Lovey, calm down, unwrap your kafia, it's on a bit too tight. You are not in Gaza, you're not in Mogadishu. All you need to do is walk off campus, go around the corner to the nearest Whole Foods or whatever and get yourself a sandwich. So while these lovies are calling for humanitarian aid, saying that this is their right, not only do they make an adverse mockery of the people in Gaza who are enduring real humanitarian crises, and thank goodness for the amount of humanitarian aid that is going in via air, sea and land, but really, somebody please organize an airdrop. Please make sure that there are gluten-free options and vegan options, because we know and we would hate for these lovies not to get their sushi or gluten-free sandwich. Really, you actually can't make this up. Anyway, the revolution must be catered. Yesterday we brought you the story that President Herzog had released a statement condemning the proposed arrest warrants from the ICC. This is the International Criminal Court. The United States and several other countries are also working together to get the court not to issue arrest warrants. South Africa, of course, wants to see Prime Minister Netanyahu as well as Defense Minister Gallant and Herzi Halevi, the IDF Chief of Staff, arrested for war crimes. Now, last night, Prime Minister Netanyahu, whether or not you like him or you don't like him, released a very, very strongly worded statement, and I'll actually read to you from it. He says, "You have to hear this to believe this. The International Criminal Court in The Hague is contemplating issuing arrest warrants against senior Israeli government and military officials as war criminals. This would be an outrage of historic proportions. International bodies like the ICC arose in the wake of the Holocaust committed against the Jewish people. They were set up to prevent such horrors, to prevent future genocides. Yet now the ICC is trying to put Israel in the dock, is trying to put us in the dock as we defend ourselves against genocidal terrorists and regimes. Iran, of course, that openly works to destroy the one and only Jewish state. Branding Israel's leaders and soldiers as war criminals will pour jet fuel on the fires of anti-Semitism, those fires that are already raging on the campuses of America and across capitals around the world. It will also be the first time that a democratic country fighting for its life according to the rules of war is itself accused of war crimes. The Israeli army, the IDF, is one of the most moral militaries in the world. It takes endless measures to prevent civilian casualties, measures that no other army takes. It does so while fighting a terrorist enemy which uses its own civilians as human shields. You know the truth. Hamas places its weapons, its terrorists in hospitals, schools, mosques throughout civilian areas. They do this in order to win immunity and to maximize civilian casualties. And he goes on to talk about who the ICC is targeting, and he also talks about Israel's independent legal system that rigorously investigates all violations of the law. And it must be noted that Israel is not within the jurisdiction of the ICC. And finally, these violent protests have spread around the world and are not just targeted at Jews or Jewish students on campus, but yesterday the German ambassador to the Palestinian Authority, Ambassador Aucha, as well as Germany's ambassador to Israel, Ambassador Stefan Siebert, were about to meet with other EU mission heads at Birzeit University in the West Bank when student protesters forcibly expelled them from the university, chanting some really hateful invective, as well as throwing rocks and projectiles at them that had to be extracted peacefully. Taking to the social media platform X, Ambassador Aucha said that this was very, very regrettable and that peace and dialogue should be the order or the order of the day here. So what we are seeing is just an escalation towards, I don't know, maybe we need to call it anarchy, but here at the Israel Brief, we stand firmly on the side of Israel. We stand firmly on the side of democracy. And while we absolutely support the freedom of speech, violence is never, ever acceptable. This brings me to the end of today's edition of the Israel Brief. Please don't forget to check out our website at www.layoftheland.online. We have an excellent article by Professor Raymond Wax explaining the ICJ's ruling. This is in the South Africa versus Israel genocide case. It is also up on our Facebook page. If you haven't joined our community, please do so by liking, sharing, clicking. You guys know what to do at Lottle's site. This right here is our YouTube channel. If you like what you see, please hit that red subscribe button, and we're on X at Love the Land 5. I'm Rolene Marks, a little bit exhausted today, but I'll check in with you guys tomorrow. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Bye for now.